They're
Well,
going to watch it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter.
okay.
That we are streaming right now.
Yeah, I'm involved in about half a dozen astronomy-oriented groups on Facebook, and I pumped the poster out to all of those, and I sent it to all my students. So hopefully we'll get some people
Oh, you will.
linking in.
Oop.
And I've got quite a few who are interested, Scott, in who can't join us live this morning. Many teachers are like, I'm in class. Okay. So I promised them all faithfully that there'll be a recording of the presentation. And
It'll be recorded on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So
there you go.
Yeah, I have a science teacher friend who said exactly the same thing.
yeah.
Said he'd pick it up on the recording.
Yeah, and a lot of our programs are watched just like that. We do get people that have subscribed to us and they watch while they're working, I think. So
Work.
yeah. They can hear us, of course, in the background. I leave the mics on even during the intro. But let's see. Can check to see if people are watching right now. Yeah,
Daniel, I'm sending you the same message, so you've got it.
Thank
right
you.
away.
Thank you. And I'll see. There we are. We have a chat. So I will put in the link.
some people already chatting with us. Aaron Thompson says, yes, I have headphones on while working. Lots of laughs. This will be educational, because we want everybody to get involved in education somehow.
Oh, sure. No, it's great.
Yeah, that's the link for my book, Steve.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. And since it doesn't cost nothing, feel free to share it far and wide. It's good for me professionally at the university to have more people, a broader audience, download the book and share. Part of my, I'm sure you know how most university appointments work. You're paid 80% for your teaching and research work, and then 20% is supposed to be for service. And I avoid committees like the Black Death. And I do things like I'll review scholarship applications, but I've avoided, this is my 7th year, and I've yet to be on a committee with other people wrangling about God knows what all. And instead I travel about, I log about 3,000 to 4,000 miles a year traveling to schools. And sometimes I go in the evening and take telescopes and binoculars, and sometimes I go during the day and I'm a guest speaker in classrooms. Other times I go and I do professional development in low-cost science and astronomy and space science for faculty. A lot at elementary and middle schools. Again, although virtually, my vast majority of my experiences at high school and some at the college level, I interact very little with teachers at that level. My who are teaching younger audiences. Hello, Mr. Dog.
Well, hello everybody. I am really happy to have everybody with me today, the audience, and Dr. Daniel Barth from the University of Arkansas. And apparently I have given Steve Edberg an honorary doctorate, okay, which gives you an idea of how highly I regard your intellect, Steve. So. Steve is a retired JPL scientist, planetary scientist, professional astronomer, and our subject today is going to be the importance of hands-on activity in science, not only in schools but educational outreach, public educational outreach, maybe homeschoolers, that kind of thing, and the difference that this can make in people's lives of all ages. I've certainly seen it work for me in my the sidewalk astronomy I've done, and events that I've done. A lot of these with Steve and also with Daniel. So it's been a privilege to get to know both of you. Daniel I met very early on when before he was Dr. Daniel Barth. He was working at Scope City in California, and I know that he attended the Riverside Telescope Makers Conference, and although Steve Edberg is a professional scientist, professional astronomer, he's also an amateur astronomer and loves the hobby and loves the community of amateur astronomers. And gosh, I don't know, for 30 years or so, conducted and worked with the managing team that ran the Riverside Telescope Makers Conference. So that was one of the more amazing events for amateurs in the world. And so when we were talking earlier about our topic today, and we wanted to bring a focus on some of the challenges in teaching science today, the positive things, but also some of the weaknesses. And so I guess I'll let you get started with this, Daniel. And where do you think what is the state of this today from your perspective?
I think we're really undergoing a renaissance in the way science is taught. The standards-based movement has been with us for about 20 or 25 years now. And I think although it started out very nobly, it's kind of decayed. We tend to teach science, or we have taught science, as a collection of facts rather than as a process, as a culture, as an inquiry. And you wouldn't teach violin or playing basketball by showing YouTube videos and giving worksheets, but we tend to teach science that way. I like to tell my young teachers that science is a verb. It's an activity, it's a thing we do. And we can't teach children science unless we engage them in inquiry. And that's probably the most powerful message that I give out to teachers every year is engage students in live, real activities. And it doesn't have to be expensive. I tend to focus on low-cost science because I taught in high-poverty areas for more than 20 years, places where I had no money. And so we had to come up with ways to do science for pennies. And it wasn't ineffective. Mm-hmm. And the hands-on science methodology, far more powerful for ESL students who are not native speakers, for students with various special needs, including gifted kids. Gifted kids are often special needs students that are ignored.
True.
We find anyway. And the hands-on engagement gives them the scope to employ their gifts rather than saying, oh, you're really smart, so you can do 10 more algebra problems.
Right.
So That's my take in a nutshell, I suppose.
Steve, you had to work with teams to get space missions to Jupiter and Saturn, and some very complex things. You're working with, of course, brilliant people. Also, you helped bring up generations of amateur astronomers to understand the current goings on in space exploration, and and you are extremely good with the telescope. So what did you see as far as some of the challenges and some of the highlights?
Well, first I'll just say that I agree that involving the students is just key. And my philosophy is one of trying to promote curiosity as well. The getting the students involved in doing something allows them to have their own moment of discovery and say, aha, that's how that really works. And I'll tell you, I still grin when I figure out something or come up with a new way of demonstrating it that does exactly that, just because it's aha, this really works. And that is for me personally is a very, very powerful way of doing things. It even comes down when I will decide, okay, I'm going to try and do the math behind this, which I've had the training for, and I'll do it. And sure enough, it works. And I learned something that way as well. Right. And so, especially with the lower grades, my intention is to start, and even with the upper grades, is always just to try and start with what can we observe, and even more so to promote the curiosity for them to ask their own questions about what can I see and how do I explain it. And that's where the activities that we can present in the classroom, whether the classroom is a classroom or a park, a campground, or a kitchen table, can all work together, can all cover the same things, which is what's the question and what can I learn by doing something either analogous or just by observing. And there's a whole raft of things that more take only a little imagination to start with. I had a mom ask me, what can I do, especially now when she has some precocious kids and we're stuck with a lot of staying at home. And well, the answer is go look in your backyard. Look at the trees, look at the grass. Are they all the same greens? Short answer is no.
No.
Now the question is, well, what makes them different and why? And the beauty of something like that is that not only can you ask that question of why are they all green and why are the greens different, but you can go take it different ways. Does it have something to do with the way our eyes work? Does it have something to do with the way the trees or grass work? Does it have something to do with what grows where? It's or the way the light reflects. How does it change from noon time to sunset? And so and that's just a simple example. There are a lot of things that you can do that. And the other thing that I want to share is an experience that I had years ago. If I will give you the times, and you're probably surprised, like, well, what took you so long? But it took a long time. I was walking back. I am a graduate of UC Santa Cruz, and in 1974, Comet Kohoutek was going to be visible. I arranged to have my telescope out at College 5, which was a good 20-minute walk from Crown College where I was. College 5 has its own name now. It's Porter, but I still call it College 5. And I was coming back, and it was a foggy night, it turned out, from there. And I come to this street where there's a flashing yellow light to mark a crosswalk because it's dark. They don't have street lights. and it's narrow, the whole thing, just a warning light. And I'm looking at how I am seeing the light go through the fog, and I could see it moving. And I'm standing there thinking, well, how can that be? Because I know for darn sure that the speed of light is a lot faster than I can see it going through fog.
Right.
It took me 25 years to figure it out. It was always rattling around.
Okay. And what was the answer?
Well, it took the change in tail lights and side lights on trucks from tungsten bulbs to LEDs to answer the question. Because, and you can still see it now if you pay attention to turn signals on any vehicle. Some of them, the tungsten ones, ramp up.
True.
In brightness. They take probably half a second or so. An LED to turn on takes something on the order of a microsecond.
Right.
And so what I was seeing was the ramp up of the illumination from that yellow tungsten bulb in the flasher going through the fog.
Right. Well, the light is there, but it's just getting brighter. It's illuminating.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it was ramping up in brightness.
Right.
And yeah, it took a long time, but it's just one of those things where having things rattle around in your brain for a while, eventually you do figure it out if the right clue is there. And that's where I say maintaining curiosity and observing the world around you is so important to teach, or not teach, to encourage, because we all start off as physicists. We have a 2-year-old grandson now, and he's a physicist, and he just learned that he can push around on flashcards on the floor. I mean, he's walking and running, but he was pushing around like he was swimming the other day.
That's cool.
It's hilarious to watch.
That's cool. Hey, I'm going to read some of the comments that we're getting already for the show here. Of course, people loving these kinds of programs. We love that you love it, so that's great. We got people watching from Chile and from around the world here, which is great. Kanan down in South America is saying, today I'm going to try Steve's challenge, but with my binoculars, it's a bit difficult to find Polaris from the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
Aaron Thompson says, that was great. Science is a verb. That is very true. Too much of teaching today mimics the style of watching YouTube videos instead of interaction. Dusty Haskins says, this is a pleasant surprise. It takes my mind off of the daily monotony. You might, we don't want to take away from your work there, but try to do both. Kanan says, I can see Scorpio, so I'll try Antares and Steve's challenge. Love you guys, and thank you for sharing with us. Jeff says he'll never forget that. Science is a verb. Yes. So we're going to get more into this too. But and we talked again a little bit before the show, and so what do you guys find are, the techniques that you've employed, or how have you overcome some of the challenges? Especially, I guess this is going to be directed at you, Daniel, because you've been teaching in schools, high school for
28 years, high school, college level, and now this is my 7th year training teachers at the university. So this is my 43rd year in education, which just I don't even like to admit to that number.
Right.
It's true.
And so I think I know from talking to other educators that there are policy issues in the educational system that you have to work through or work with, or what other challenges do you see? What is it that
Well, I can take you through 2 primary ones.
Yeah.
In many of my classes, we teach students how to sell activity-based and outdoor education to administrators, parents, and department leaders. because there's a great fear amongst educational leaders, administrators, department chair, that you're not covering the standards, the test scores won't be high enough, our jobs will be in danger. How can you possibly cover this material going outside and looking at the grass or looking at the sky? But in fact, when we engage students this way, we find that more engaged students retain more. Where there is love, the knowledge will follow and it will stick. Whereas we're just shoving facts at people, it doesn't. As a teacher, one of the things I try to train my young teachers to do is to show their students where the boundaries of their knowledge are. And when I do it to them, they don't like it very well. They've been used to a standards-based system, learn, believe, repeat, bubble test, you're successful, now you're smart. And I say, okay, let's show you where the boundaries of your knowledge are. And we started out the year, we said, okay, here's what the moon looks like tonight. Sketch in ink, please, what you think the moon will look like over the next week. Then go out and look. Well, some of them were close, but not. And so then we went ahead and we said, okay, let's make a model. And this is salt dough. So this is, you can find a recipe anywhere online. And we roll it out and we cut the phases and we arrange them. And, oh, good, now we're smart. Now we know what the phases are.
Right.
And then you stop the train and you say, good, how does it work?
Yeah.
And they're like, excuse me? Well, how does it change? What shape is the moon? Isn't it a ball? How do you know? And it stops them, and they don't know. They've been told. So we do low-cost science. And so what we have our young teachers doing this week is we're making planetary models out of ping pong balls, which we then decorate. This one is the moon. The one in my other hand here, that's Australia.
That's beautiful.
And these don't have to be art. We tell the teachers that a child can make a group of continents and oceans and call it Planet Bob if they want to, because the moons around all planets experience phases for the same reason by the same mechanism. And once they make this model, and this Earth-Moon system model costs about 50 cents. A tabletop planetarium, $500 and up. And the students can make these. And then, okay, how does it work? When the moon goes around, how do we see phases? And they get to experiment and explore. And they're very uncomfortable at first being shown where the holes in their science education lie. And yet, when we get them engaged in play, make your model, play with it, see what you can find out. By the way, the trick here, if you want, Scott will post a link on my book, Astronomy for Educators. This is Activity 28, sure. And I believe it's 28. The secret is we see phases because we observe from the surface of the Earth. If I'm looking at it here from a tabletop, I'm seeing it from a godlike perspective, equivalent to millions of miles out in space. But if we put our eye down here and we're looking from the Earth to the moon, then phases appear very naturally as a result of the moon's orbit around the Earth, and the sun being a single candle, always illuminating half of the planet or moon, the other half in darkness. And once this mechanism becomes apparent, because they've created a model and then explored with it, played with it, and once they discover things, now they acknowledge, which is far more powerful than being told. The moon goes around in 28 days. There's phases, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard this. Remember Charlie Brown cartoons? Wah, 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 wah. And sometimes it seems like that. We're just feeding facts. And instead, we don't give them answers. We give them challenges and materials. And we make it so inexpensive that no matter where you teach or where you are, if you wanted to do this with ping pong balls, handball, roundish rocks, it wouldn't really matter. Christmas ornaments, you want purpose. It's easy and it's inexpensive, and anyone can do it. My students are initially very apprehensive because it's a method of learning they haven't explored before. But when they start engaging in it, they really have a lot of fun. And I hear all the time from young teachers, I can't wait this in a classroom and share it with kids, because children are going to be delighted. And there's the secret to real powerful teaching and learning. Kids who are delighted and engaged.
Right, right. And so where do you find where you just run into a brick wall? I mean, what is the biggest challenge for you today?
The biggest challenges I have been in times and places where the district has succumbed to a slick publishing house salesman and bought a canned curriculum. Here's a box to give to teachers, which has a textbook and step by step, day by day. And they're basically saying you don't even have to have a teacher. You just have to have someone read and hand out papers. Here's all the activities and quizzes. And if you do this, your scores will go up. Well, having bought this promise for $10, $50, $100,000 for a whole district worth of children, then administrators are loath to have you break away from that mold and do an act. What do you mean you can do it with, $10 worth of ping pong balls and some markers and some clay? That's nonsense. We've spent lots of money on this, and by George, you're going to use it. However, what I have found is that these miracle programs don't change the status quo very much. They move the needle very little. Engaging students in real science activities and explorations moves the needle a great deal. And it moves the needle for at-risk populations, kids who aren't engaged, kids who don't like school, kids who don't have native fluency in English. These at-risk populations delight in this hands-on stuff. Every child makes these little models in their own language in their head. I tell my students that every child is SSL, science is a second language. Once they have the experience, then we teach them how to express what they know. Every student I've ever had has said, I'm smarter than the tests indicate. I knew that. I didn't know how to tell you. Give them the experience, teach them how to fluently express what they know. And now you've created someone who owns their knowledge, can share their knowledge, and when they feel fluent, they feel smart, they feel empowered, and they're ready to engage in the next challenge.
Yeah.
On the contrary, when we test them and they say, oh, I got this test on a bubble score, a lot of times they become more reluctant to engage. And the activity-based stuff with simple materials gets children excited. They're pleased with their own success. They're delighted with their own fluency, and that makes them ready to go. And what I've also found is even in the most staunch standards-based situations in school, administrators stop arguing with success after a while. It doesn't take very long.
Right.
They are often mystified at what you do, but they're delighted with the results, and they stop arguing with success. They really do. So you can break through, but you got to know how to sell it. And a lot of my young teachers are surprised when I spend time teaching them how to sell this to parents and administrators. Why do we have to learn this? Because there's resistance. And you need to break through because you have a duty to actually genuinely engage your students. And you can't really do that with a YouTube video and a worksheet.
Right.
No offense to YouTube.
Right.
No, to people who put videos online or people who write lovely textbooks. I'm a teacher. But engagement with a real activity is always superior.
Agreed.
Can
Steve.
I jump in and follow along on that, Scott, or did you have a question for me?
Sure. I do have a question for you because while Daniel's been involved in the formal side of student education, you've been involved in bringing up, as I mentioned before, generations of amateur astronomers, but I believe also your peers in your environment at JPL and also working at the various observatories that you've been at, where you've been trying to solve problems and understand concepts and getting data. but what did you, after 30 years of running the Riverside Telescope Makers Conference, obviously it wasn't there just only to have a good time. We did have a good time there, but you were bringing, you were our scientist that we could all rely on for some of the latest information and stuff. But what did you find was some of the biggest challenges in working with the amateur astronomers that many of us wanted to do outreach? We wanted to get the facts straight. We wanted to engage people. What did you find were the hooks that got amateur astronomers engaged, and maybe your peers engaged on the professional level?
That's a tough question. Honestly, the thing that I've found is that most people are already hooked. That's the thing. They are engaged in astronomy in one form or another. Used to say that there were like three kinds of amateur astronomers, or three kinds of astronomers. Four. You call the researchers, the planetarium people, the amateur astronomers who are observers, and the amateur telescope makers. And each has their own enjoyment of what they do. The question in some ways is, how do you get some of those? The planetarium folks are in love with outreach, and there are a lot of amateur astronomers who that's one of the prime things that they do. They just want to take a telescope out, put it on the sidewalk, and let people observe, and that's great.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you, except to try and convince somebody to come out and try that, I don't think that you necessarily are going to find people moving very much between those categories. And even I, as somebody who has worked professionally and as an amateur in bringing the sky and science to people, there are things that I like which is a better format for me, and things that are not as good. I'm not as good at it at a JPL open house as I am out with a telescope on a star party for the public. And
I've been with you at JPL open house, and I thought you were amazing. So we did a solar thing together many years ago. You might remember. So
I do. Yep, I do. And so it's one of those things where it's not so much to me trying to hook the people as to help them find their niche, and recognize that it's just not for some people. And we see that in universities, certainly, where there are some researchers who you don't want to even let near students, and others who are every bit as good and love to bring students along and include freshmen in their research projects. It's just true for I think that's the way things are. So I don't have a magic wand that will tell you how to bring more people in, but it's more a matter of encouraging anyone who expresses the slightest amount of interest. And this even goes simply to saying, a student asks a question, and my response is most often to ask them a question back, so that they are motivated to try and answer it themselves. And yes, sometimes the question is of such complexity that I have to try and answer it, but I'll do the best I can to make sure that it's in terms that they can understand and that they can perhaps build on as well.
Sure. Maybe you could also expand on some of the other things that you've been involved with. Steve, I think that you are particularly gifted in inspiring people to take next steps. Maybe you don't recognize that in yourself, but certainly maybe we can go all the way back to Halley's Comet in the International Halley Watch Pro-Am project, okay? That was the first Pro-Am project I'd ever heard of, okay? I didn't know it was possible that as an amateur astronomer that you could work with professional astronomers, okay? And, a mutual best friend that we have was Mark Coco. He gets me involved in International Halley Watch, and I get to meet you way back in the 80s. And then, of course, you worked on, these amazing planetary missions, with Galileo and Cassini, both, and I think that at JPL, maybe there was always an outreach component, but I think that outreach became a much more important component of every mission and everything that NASA does and everything that JPL does to engage the audience. So from your perspective as a scientist and a professional astronomer, did you find those things to be a burden, or did you find those things to be enablers, and did you thrive in that?
Oh, well, I thrived because I didn't have to end up feeling guilty about doing stuff that I love doing. Mm-hmm. And that was actually related to NASA's mission, which is not just to go explore the universe. It's actually and it's written into the 1958 National Aeronautics and Space Act that NASA will bring the results to the public.
Right.
And, you asked Daniel, what are some of the limitations that he's run into? And even there, we had them, I say we for the community of outreachers, had limitations as well, because budgets would fluctuate like this. It used to be, for a while, there was this golden period when project managers were told you should be spending 2% of your budget on outreach. And if you think about a budget that is on the order of a couple $100 million a year, such as for Cassini, and it varied, but it was in that range. That's a lot of money that you can use for outreach. But then that requirement gets dropped, and suddenly, because there are some project managers who don't appreciate the value of making sure the public is engaged, it drops to you got 2 half-time people maybe, or half-time and quarter-time 2 people. And it's very, very hard, in my experience, to actually work 2 jobs, even at halftime. And if you're a quarter time on something, that means you got 3 quarters that might be 3 different quarters doing something, and you can hardly get anything done.
Right. Not there.
So, and then NASA will say, well, we don't do outreach. We do, and public education isn't the word, and it, that changes about every 5 years.
I see.
And so you have to deal with these things as well, and it gets hard, and frustrating because of that. There's nothing wrong with the word outreach.
No,
and that's what we're doing. Maybe it reflects some NASA upper management person's view that we don't do that because that's not what we do, but it why do I need to use 3 words to say the thing that it really still is?
To the public, because there has to be public approval of what NASA is a government-funded program, and so there has to be public enthusiasm for that. And so bringing that up is extremely important. That kind of stuff gets translated to people like Daniel, who has to take what we've learned and formulate that into engaging programs for young minds, or maybe all ages of minds. And so that's, I understand those challenges, and I understand, I've run into, as an amateur astronomer, engaging with the professional community. Occasionally you run into academia who feels like, we don't have time, we're doing serious work here. We don't have time to hold people's hands and take them along and teach them basic concepts when they themselves haven't done their homework, okay, so to speak. If they can't be up to speed with us, we don't have time to walk down to them. I heard one person in my outreach career describe it as they were talking about the unwashed masses, and I said, I'd never heard the term before, unwashed masses, and they said, well, those that don't have PhDs. I go, well, I must be one of the unwashed masses. you know, and so that kind of perception does set up barriers. But I still believe that we have gone through this incredible golden age. We are I talk about it all the time and on the shows, and when I get to engage with people like the two of you, about all the discoveries and all the rest of it that's out there, and all the information that's readily available at your fingertips. You talked about something about the Cassini, was it Cassini Saturn in your kitchen project? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Steve?
Yeah, I had a group, but I was primary author on more than half of them, that put together a collection of, it was material mostly for grades 5 through 8, but in reality, I found that a competent teacher could expand that all the way into high school and could reduce the complexity a lot of the time down into primary grades. But the idea was to use easily available and inexpensive items, a lot of them coming from the kitchen or a kitchen store, that would allow you to investigate in the classroom environment or at home or at an astronomy club meeting how scientists do the work. One example, which I didn't even mention to you before, we now know, conveniently enough, though we didn't really at the time, we didn't know it was as true as it is, that a lot of asteroids are shaped like peanuts. Well, what happens, how do we measure the brightness and the rotation period of a asteroid when it's millions of miles away? How do we know its shape? That sort of thing. Well, it turns out, put a peanut in a room against a black background. Black foam core is good. You can get a chunk that's like 2 foot by 4 foot. And sorry for our international viewers, I'm not going to try and swap that into meters, but you 1.5 by 1 by 2 meters or something like that.
75 by 120 centimeters.
Yeah, thank you. The point being that then if you well, you could use needles. They're a little risky with kids, but you can straighten out a paper clip, push it through the peanut, and then rotate it against the black background. And what do you see? Well, the side of it is that you're seeing, now the telescope is larger on one side and reflects more light than when it rotates around and you're looking end on. That's how you can tell. And if it's rotating at a regular rate, you suddenly know that it's rotating because the light curve, look at all the words I'm using now that have to either be explained or become obvious just from the usage. The light curve tells you this thing has to be rotating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what happens if it happens to be rotating face on? So you're looking down on the pole. Wait a minute, it's not going to be obvious. But the other thing that we know is these things maintain the polar direction. So if you wait until you're looking at from a different direction in the orbit, suddenly you see the end on thing. I didn't bring any of my examples. The end on,
yeah, you have,
instead of going like this, you're seeing it going like this again, because you're looking 90 degrees away. So again, you can figure out if it's rotating. But that's how we do photometry of asteroids. It's simple in concept.
yes.
And to me, getting those concepts out makes it then much easier to figure out all the problems that really come in when you're trying to look through an atmosphere that sometimes has clouds, and you can't get the geometry you want because Mother Nature is just not cooperating, and that can happen too. And so those are the kinds of things. What about testing for greenhouse effect? What is that really? Well, we know that carbon dioxide, and have known for on the order of 160 years, that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. What about filling bottles? You can get colored bottles. Go to the store and get a few liter bottles. There's green. You can probably find a brown. You can find clear, and put thermometers in each of those, seal them with the thermometers inside, put them out in the sun, and see which one gets warmest. And if you really want to put CO2 in, go ahead and buy some dry ice. A lot of refrigeration places will sell you a few pounds of it. And besides, all the students, no matter what age, including mom and dad and teacher, enjoy playing with carefully with dry ice. You put a chip in there and into each bottle, so you actually have a carbon dioxide atmosphere, and see what's going on. You don't seal it till all the dry ice is gone, by the way. But the point is that you can investigate whether a greenhouse works because it's green or just because it's sealed off. The answer is really it's sealed off. But that doesn't mean greenhouse gases don't trap heat. They do. And that's testable too. So there are a variety of things that can be done that, like I say, it's Cassini in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And making those studies, and even what you're familiar with. Let me give another example. Everybody probably gets a chance to go to a beach sometime, somewhen. And if you stay the day, you realize, boy, it sure is hot on the top. When I walk, I'm going to dig my feet in so I'm not having to burn the soles of my bare feet on the surface. Well, isn't it interesting that when you wait till after sunset, all of a sudden, instead of burning your feet, they're cold up on the surface, so you don't push them underneath the surface, and guess what? It's warmer, isn't it?
Warmer. Yes.
What's going on there?
Yep.
And if you go around walking to the fire rings that might be there, or just if there's a rock wall somewhere or a brick wall, whatever it is, and you find that it's been soaking up sunlight all day, it radiates heat into the night. And you can feel that it's still warm well after dark, after the sand has gotten cold. So what does that tell you about the materials? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't even take special stuff. You can get fancy and go get a thermometer and start measuring it. And it's wonderful now that you can get a non-touch, they're called, thermometer. That's what everybody's using in airports or walking into some stores now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But you can buy those for about $20 and go around measuring everything from freezing and maybe a little below all the way up to several hundred degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. Doesn't matter. And it'll read out whichever way you choose. Mm-hmm. And that's a very powerful way of studying the world around you. Which warms up faster, wood or brick? Which stays warm longer, wood or brick? Which stays warm if you paint the brick white, one brick white and one brick black? Right. And you might be surprised.
Right.
I certainly was.
Yeah.
Because I did this.
And you did these things.
Yes, I did experiments like that.
Both of you guys have some really, great low cost, demonstrations. You did, Steve, you and I did a program earlier where you demonstrated how LIGO works, gravity waves, Daniel has, he's already shown a couple of very nice examples of things that he's done. So, it doesn't cost much to teach really profound concepts of science and fundamentals. So it's not it's not a money thing, right? It's not like, let's throw more money at this, okay, at this problem. I do see the rate of new information, new discoveries coming about, maybe old theories that we, even as amateur astronomers, have held on to for a long time, okay, now starting to be washed away with new observations, new ways of thinking about the universe, new ways of thinking about science. And this kind of brings me into the next generation science standards that I'm always hearing about. I would think that a lot of those started, the basis of those started with Steve and the generations of professional researchers at places like the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but also with educators. How are the next generation science standards being developed, Daniel?
We have a new set of science standards called Next Generation Science Standards. What's really great, and I'm working on, much as I grumble about science standards, I was pulled in by the Department of Ed, State of Arkansas, to help write some of this new curriculum. And they said, come help us do this. And I was very pleased. The folks that they had helping write these were working teachers from college, high school, middle school, elementary school. These working educators would get together and we would spend time talking about, okay, what are our major themes we want to cover? What standards should there be? What kind of activities and evidence should teachers expect students to engage in? So really, we're not, at least in our state here in Arkansas, we're not going to ivory tower academics. No critique of my many colleagues who engage in scholarly research about education, but the department saw the value of bringing in people who were working teachers, who had many years of experience working in regular classrooms with students, because people who've actually done the job have a far better idea how the job should be done and what limitations are realistic, what expectations are realistic. When I was teaching physics, chemistry, astronomy in high school, astronomy was great because there were no standards. I could do it myself. With physics and chemistry, I often found that some of the expectations, you kind of wonder who came up with this for high school freshmen and sophomores, much less for students. These very esoteric academic standards of content. And my first thought on looking at a lot of these is, how do I teach this? How do I make it accessible for young people? So I think Arkansas has a great model of using primarily working educators, workaday people who are immersed in their profession. We have a much better idea, the workaday people in any profession have a much better idea of what's realistic and what isn't. I still think that mile-wide, inch-deep curriculum is a mistake. I would rather see far fewer topics explored in more depth where students get the opportunity for a genuine inquiry-based program. And inquiry-based education was very popular in the 80s and early 90s, but education has to reinvent itself every 10 or 15 years. And standards-based education has been in vogue for a while. I think it's retained its popularity because it lends itself easily to testing and measurement. But we've made the mistake of saying, let's test how well children are doing. And then we've said, well, doesn't that tell us really how good the school is or how proficient the educators are? And in fact, that's a much much weaker correlation.
And what is the scientific literacy of the entire community? You know,
yes,
that's
yes. You can take it. You can take two schools which have one has very high scores and one has lower scores. Kind of a thought experiment. Let's take the faculty and swap them. Are the scores going to be different? Let's keep the faculty where they are and swap the student populations. Are the scores suddenly going to be different? I think not so much, because we have schools where students have been given a very dry curriculum and they haven't been engaged in an inquiry-based program.
right.
I think I've shown in teaching in very high poverty, high crime, high drug use, lots of social problems in schools where I've taught, and yet this kind of inquiry, I not only get the top tier students, get a great response from middle and lower tier students who are not normally considered science worthy.
Yeah.
And I've had students come up to me and say, well, my counselor won't let me in your physics program, but I really want to build rocket cars and I don't know if I know the math. My response was always, I'll talk to your counselor, I'll let you in. You'll have to work with me. I'll teach you all the math you need to know and we'll build the coolest damn rocket car ever.
Right.
And stalking the second tier made my programs very successful. A lot of administrators and colleagues, well, you're gonna ruin your program by recruiting these kids. You're nuts. These kids, some of what they considered to be second tier students were the very best at inquiry and hands-on learning. They were unafraid to dive in. They hadn't been taught that the wrong answer was failure. They just thought it was boring as hell. And when they had a pathway to engage and to show how good they are, allowing students multiple ways to show how smart they are, these second tier students got a lot of respect in the hands-on engineering-based programs because a lot of them had skills and experiences with tools and hands-on, and I've got to fix it, I've got to make it work because I can't buy a new one. These students were seen as, they were recruited be on my team. We want you to help us build our next project. Oh my God, we did the rocket car and you whooped our butt and now we've got to build an airplane. And come on, be on our team. It was great to see. It was exciting.
I have some comments from our chat here. Carlos Hernandez says, I agree with Steve that there exist the four groups that he mentioned. We were talking about amateur astronomers and that community. It is amazing to me to see the cooperation between amateur and professional astronomers since the 1970s. Steve and I met through the Galileo mission to Jupiter in the 1990s, and I was his guest for the Galileo probe entry into the atmosphere of Jupiter in December. In 1995, amateur astronomers now have, that was in 1995. Amateur astronomers now have the equipment and dedication to support the professional studies. Thank you, Steve. So that's very nice.
Carlos.
Let's see. We've got Gary Palmer in the UK. He says, outreach here is down to a local society or individuals. None of the organizations are interested. They are all geared to getting results from the professional astronomers. Okay. There's some challenges there. I did put in some links that Steve shared with us from NASA for the Cassini in Your Kitchen programs. So
yeah, I got to say, by the way, I just checked it, and I'm going to have to see if I can find a way to get into that, because even though the link is there, it doesn't go where it ought to.
I think it's I think there's a space that it put in there or something. So search Pumas, search the keywords that's in that string there, and that should take you to the link if you're watching here. Let's see. Kanan says, I love how Steve explains the work of astronomers in simple words. It makes it so easy for us to understand his work. See, that's the gift that both of these guys have, okay? They have taken the time to articulate pretty complex concepts in language that anybody can understand. I had the privilege one time to see Stephen Hawking lecture. And I thought that when I went to Caltech that I wouldn't understand any of this high-level physics talk. I just kind of wanted to be in the atmosphere of it, and I wanted to see Stephen Hawking. So I sat down, I'm in the 10th row back, and I was thrilled to learn that Hawking was humorous, could explain some super difficult concepts about Hawking radiation and black holes in the simplest terms that anyone could understand it. Towards the end, he was taking questions that had been prepared for him from students at Caltech. And most of them asked fairly straightforward questions, and he answered them very quickly in a very straightforward way. But the last question was this page-and-a-half long question that I can't even recite. Okay, it sounded very complex and very high level, or not high level, but it was, complicated. Okay, and I think that when Hawking read it, he said, what this guy's really asking is this, and he asked the question in like 10 words, and he said, and the answer is this, and he answered it like in 5 words. He said, if you can't answer the question in less than 5 minutes, you don't even understand it yourself. Okay, and the audience just burst out in laughter. Okay.
I was at that same program in the Noise Auditorium. It's been 92, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so that was very cool. But I've never forgot that. Now that's the real mark of someone that understands what they're talking about. It is, and someone that can explain it in the most simplest of terms. That's the genius. That's the genius right there. So,
Scott, if we have a little more time,
yeah,
I would like to do, one of those instant demos.
let's do it. Let's do
Okay.
it. Daniel?
Sure, I can do an easy one.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to build on what Daniel's been talking about, in fact, with lunar phases. And just to set the scene here, out to my right is the sun. That's actually my patio door, sliding glass door. So I've got light coming in. You can see it shining on the side of my head.
Yes.
Turns out we have a second star here. It's out in the backyard, or out in our front yard, but through the living room window, but ignore that. But what I want to do is just show lunar phases. And just to show that it doesn't take very much, what I'm going to do is take my fist, and it's hard to, I'm trying to decide what the easiest way for you to see this is going to be. And I don't have a ball. Tennis balls are great for this, by the way, because they actually have an atmosphere of fuzz. But I don't have one at hand. I didn't come prepared for that. But I'll take my fist. And if I want to know what's happening, all I need to do is start the revolution of the moon and Earth. My head is the Earth. First of all, I've just gone into eclipse. But now you can maybe see that all the light, I've got a full moon here.
Yes.
And now I'm coming around. Got to move my chair a little bit. And now you may see my half moon. Again, it's not round, it's my fist. And I come around and I've got new moon. And it's that simple with a chair that spins.
Right.
A lot of people have those.
Right.
Or a teacher at her desk in the classroom, or his desk in the classroom will have one. So it's easy to find stuff like that. What about, does the moon rotate? Everybody says, no, it doesn't rotate. We always see the same face. So I'm going to use an LA love rock to demonstrate the same thing. And here the question is the moon rotating? Because I'm keeping the backside of the LA love rock to me as it makes one revolution around me. And sure enough, might be able to read LA Love Rock here.
Yes.
Goes into eclipse. There's LA Love Rock again. And in fact, it of course has maintained the same face towards me. And now it's back facing you. So if I do the other thing and make sure that it's not rotating, so it's going to keep LA Love pointing to the camera, then I end up seeing it as a skinny little rock until it gets around to full, and I'm keeping it facing you, and I've got a skinny little rock again, and there it is. So what is rotating? The rock was not as you saw it. But when on the second demo, as I saw it, it was not rotating because it always kept the same face to me in the first demo. But it's easy to take something like this and expand on that so that every student standing up with a fist or a ball can do exactly what they don't have to even conceptualize it. They can do it. Put one light in the room and you've taken care of that.
I want to point out something too. There was, and I don't know if you can still find it on YouTube, but there was a video that was made of Harvard graduates. Some of them haven't taken physics. Okay.
Oh yeah, you can find that. You can look that up.
Oh, I've seen that.
Could not
I have.
explain the seasons and why it got warmer during summer and colder during winter. You know, and there was many strange explanations and weird orbits and stuff that was described. You know, so they went down into high school level students. They also asked educators and professors, okay, some of the basics of you know, phases of the moon and seasons on Earth, and absolutely got these things wrong. It's so, you know, there's I would say that awareness, you know, especially from this film, brought a lot of light on the problem. Okay. But you know, I mean, that explanation that you give there, Steve, is simple, brilliant, and would, you know, a second grader, first grader, kindergarten student could grasp this concept, you know, so.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I prefer, YouTube is wonderful. There are lots of demonstrations you now can get, but the trouble is they're all on a screen.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you can get out and prove it to yourself, that sticks. That is what sticks. And that's what we want to do. And that's also the engagement that helps further engagement. It expands the mind to look at other things and ask more questions. And that's what science does as well. That science as a verb is expanding one's mind.
Right, which is the whole reason for this particular program. Daniel, did you have?
I have two things I can show you really quickly that are fun.
Yeah.
One of them I mentioned to you earlier, and I'll hold this up. Because of the problem with images that Steve talked, I've had students and parents come and say, oh, look through the telescope. Oh, yeah, it's the moon. I've seen it. People get bombarded with thousands of images. So what we do is we take clay and we have students take a marble, push it in, make a crater. Oh, look, it pushes the clay up. It has a raised rim. Take some blocks of clay and make mountains. Take some darker material. That's lava. Make a Maria. And then what we have to do, and I hope this will work, we have students go ahead. This isn't showing up so well, but we make this model, and then we take our flashlight and we just swing it up, some lovely short 5-7 second videos. And as they take a flashlight and move it over the surface of their model, they see the shadows change. Oh, now we go ahead and we look at the moon, and then students say, oh, look, those shadows are projecting this way. That means the sun must be over there. And they get this idea of a landscape. The other one we do, and I do this quite often with students, I'll ask them, what shape is the moon out in space? And someone will say, oh, it's a ball. It's a sphere. And then you stop the train and you say, how do you know? And it really bothers people. Well, it is. Well, how do you know? Well, and it comes down to, I've been told and I believe it. They say, okay, let's to you. Craters are round. Here's a paper plate. Craters are round. Well, if the moon is round, if in fact you look at craters toward the edge of the moon, the limb, we should see them go from very round in the center to more and more elliptical to just kind of slashes. And this should occur whether we're looking up at the top of the moon or the bottom or the eastern limb or the western limb. And we often do a model where we'll take and we'll super glue poker chips to one of these cheap vinyl play balls that you see in stores all over the place. Wow, look at the ones on the edges. And my favorite word, a fourth grade teacher said, oh, they're more ovally. There you go, more ovally. And then you say, all right, now let's go outside with a very inexpensive telescope and examine the craters of the center. First quarter is perfect for this. Craters toward the center are nice and round. Craters toward the edges are much more elliptical. It doesn't matter where on the edge you go. All the craters are more elliptical, which tells you the surface must be spherical.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it with a Google an image of the moon, and you can see it. You can see these craters are more elliptical. So you don't even need a telescope, although it's much more fun. So you can intellectually convince a student, if it is round, we should see this evidence. You don't tell them hypothesis. You don't whisper the H word. You just say model. It's poker chip glued to a vinyl ball. And then you go out and they say, oh, it's just like the ball we made in class.
Yes.
Oh, and I know because I've seen it, because I saw the shapes of the craters change. I discovered it. And I had a student in high school who said, I discovered the moon is round. I found the craters are elliptical at the edges all over and the bottom and the sides. But that part, that's dark now. Are the craters elliptical? Oh, we have to wait for the moon to come around in orbit. But yes, and a few weeks later, it is. It's true. It's really round.
We have some other...
You hear people, celebrities, say, oh, the Earth is flat. I love these folks. And, you know, well, if the Earth is flat, is the moon flat? Here's my flat moon model. It's two poker chips, one black, one white, together. Manipulate this how you will. You cannot make it come out in phases. It won't work. And flat moon was an idea back in Aristotle's time, but it was rejected by the time of Ptolemy of Egypt. And, oh, okay, so flat moon won't work. And yet we have this counter proposal, the moon is a sphere, and all the craters are essentially round. And we see that they're elliptical towards every edge. In order to do that, we must be seeing these round craters edge on, which means the moon must be a sphere.
Right.
And it's a discovery moment that, you know, what are you spending? You know, a few poker chips and a, you know, $1.95 vinyl ball and some glue. I had a teacher who objected to gluing things to school property. And so we said, okay, get a piece of nylon web strap, like a piece of a seatbelt, and glue poker chips to there and wrap it around the ball. Oh, okay. So, okay, you had to get some vinyl or nylon webbing, you know, from anywhere. And again, well, we don't like poker gambling, fine, glue quarters.
Right.
You know, it's fine. Bottle cap, anything works.
Yeah.
And a brilliant moment insight. The beauty of it is not the complex experiment, but the richness of the experience student that, oh, wow, it is. And you can just see them. The delight of discovery is in their faces and it's in their hearts. And I tell people, we're not here to give you a fact for a day. We're here to set hearts on fire for science and discovery. And that's going to serve you no matter where your life takes you, whether or not you're a scientist, because all of us as citizens called on to vote for this guy or that guy who supports this scientific proposal or that one. And we need to be citizen scientists, and we can't do if we don't give students that exciting moment of joy, if we don't set hearts on fire.
Right.
Discovery. We've failed as teachers.
I would agree, but it's certainly, Daniel, you do that every day, and Steve,
Thank you.
you even that in retirement are still doing it. So I really appreciate having both of you on today. I'm going to conclude the talk unless we have more to cover, but I will say that we had a lot of appreciation from the audience. And someone would like to know where they can buy or get a link to Dr. Barth's book. My daughter teaches kindergarten, and she might be interested.
That's delightful. And I sent you the link on chat. And because the book was published as an open ed resource under Creative Commons, it's a free text. Took me about a year to write, dictations myself. All the activities are, someone asked me, you should have links for things why don't you have any links for things on the internet? There's so many good things. I said, well, I wrote the book because I created all the activities myself.
Yeah, right.
There were no research. I started teaching that way.
You said to me.
Free, because I wanted anyone, parent, teacher, child, adult, and certainly if you're a younger person or a homeschool teacher, some of the pedagogy stuff, you're going to look at that and you may go, but the activities are very simple and straightforward. There's a lot of follow-up activities. And there are some things called being an astronomer, mathematician, which basically there's a time, okay, we've learned about this thing, these space, ping pong balls and whatnot.
Sure.
Now go out in your backyard and be an astronomer.
Yeah. Dan,
so
I don't
it's
see
there, and I'm delighted people share it.
Link. I don't see your link. Did you send?
Oh, I will share it with you right now. Okay. Let's see. To the
paste it into the
everyone. Here we go. We'll put it up to the everyone, and we'll type the message. The internet. uark.libguides.com/Barth_astro. There it is. It's up there for everyone.
Okay.
And Scott, please share it with all our friends through Explore, and be happy to hear comments. I will also put up my professional email here because I get emails from teachers and parents all the time, and I do take time to answer every single one. Teachers are welcome to collect questions from students and send them to me, and sometimes teachers contact me and say, will you be a guest Zoom speaker in our classroom? I'm happy to do that too, because I love this stuff.
Yes.
I have to say, my teaching comes secondary to my love of astronomy.
Okay. Well, it looks like
physics. That's where teachers out. Then I considered that I've earned my ration for today, and doing this sort of thing keeps my cup of joy full to overflowing.
Yeah.
And I delight in it. So
it was very interesting, and I know the audience loved it. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Daniel, thank you. Steve was on with us last night for part of the Global Star Party, and so it would be fun to have maybe some for the next Global Star Party, some quick 5-minute demonstrations.
Happy to do that
on science and astronomy and concepts and stuff, so that we can.
Certainly.
continue to bring up the audience with sound scientific concepts and improve scientific literacy around the world, as you guys have both dedicated your lives to. So, thank you very much.
Good.
And we will be back on this afternoon at 4 p.m. Central with the Explore Alliance Live in the OpenGOTO community. And we have, I think it's tomorrow, more Explore Now coming, and I'll make that announcement soon. Thanks, everyone, and take care. And feel free to reach out to Daniel Barth. And if you are interested in more information from Steve Edberg, let me know and I'll communicate that with him. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Scott.
Thank you very much.